Hello.
Hi there. How's it going?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing, Pilot?
I'm doing pretty well. I have uh my coffee, which is I guess now a feature of not just streams, but I guess any meeting involving me. I feel like I've had them in.
You have coffee? I thought you
Yeah.
were like not a coffee person.
No, I remember last year around Christmas time I was like, do people have recommendations on anything about coffee because I don't know anything?
I mean, I remember that, but that doesn't mean that you just were like, fine, I'm gonna learn coffee or
Well,
learn to like coffee, I guess.
Jim would say probably that what I drink is not coffee because I made this, realized that I forgot to put in the chocolate syrup, and then put it back in the blender. Um, is so this is a drink.
Don't let people harsh your coffee choices. It's all right.
Yeah.
I like myself a like nice um flavorful black cup of coffee. But if I have coffee that I don't like that much or is just like darker roast, then
Yeah,
I like to add a little bit of milk. There's no wrong way, I think.
that's fair.
Um, um,
But we're not here to talk about coffee.
I mean, yeah, we maybe some point we should, but that's probably not the best video experience for people. So, no, we are not. And we are here to talk about just kind of folks up with what's happening in our open publishing ecosystems Flex course. Um, and so officially kicked this Flex course off on November 28th. Um, and with our first session on HedgeDoc that Amanda and I did. And since then, we've also covered Manifold and Doxify This, which was great because we got Jojo Carlin and Paul Hibbets in for those for respectively, Jojo for Manifold and Paul for Doxify This in for those sessions to talk because they both work with the tools in the sense Jojo is heavily involved with the Manifold team, and Paul it's kind of his thing. So Doxify This is so it was really cool talking to both of them about like not only what can this thing do, but like what's the idea behind the tool? Who is this for? What problem is it trying to solve? Right? Like
Yeah,
when
because because everyone's got different design goals. Is That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. And the the best thing about that was hearing the different angles people take on this stuff. I think to me that's really always really interesting, and like the Manifold team when creating Manifold, I'm positive did not start out by saying there's no way to publish anything on the internet. It's like, no, there are ways to do that. We're trying to
There
solve
was. We
this
don't.
problem, right? And as they define it, basically. And so that's been kind of a heavy focus, I think, is sort of that intention with each of these tools, especially as we talk to folks who develop them. Um, and so that's been a real highlight for me, is kind of hearing from people on that. To be clear, the Flex course is not over. We have one more session in which we'll be talking to Brian Olendike about hacks. We actually just recorded that yesterday for full transparency, and I'm really excited for that session and see what people think about the tool. We've been very upfront about the fact that all of these tools are wildly different in what they try to solve and how they try to solve it. Um, and I think hacks is actually, in some ways, um, i- the most. It is weird because it is in some ways the most similar to say WordPress as a CMS in one way. I mean, technologically, it's very different, but
Mhm.
like um, it is a little bit more has more goals as being slightly more of a general purpose content management system. Now it can fit a
Oh.
lot of roles, and I do think it has a lot of tools that are very specifically and interestingly geared towards content creation for a course, and that's by
Mhm.
nature of where it's being developed
Yeah,
out of, and
that's
we'll
what
talk about that more in the session.
Mhm.
But you know, the Hacks is kind of the whole widget in that you use the tool and you can make pages and sites and make your content and then use that to also view the content. Whereas a lot of the other tools we talked about very much more specialize in like curating content and displaying it and the reading experience. For instance, that's Manifold to me,
Mhm.
and how you can organize things as a journal. Um, you've got HedgeDoc, which is much more about editing Markdown files, and yes, you can publicly display them, but it doesn't have much controls or capability there. And Doxify this is really about displaying Markdown files. It by its very nature has no, editing in terms of the editing the content. So it is interesting in that way because I think a lot of times, and even in the session, you'll hear Brian talk about how Hacks is so different in terms of how it's built and why that matters um, for them, for the folks developing it, and what that allows them to do in terms of developing the tool.
Yeah.
Um, so what I wanted to do is kind of give almost a play-by-play. We're not going to go into huge detail. Obviously, we only have a limited amount of time, but I wanted to do a little play-by-play of kind of some of my favorite stuff that we've gone through of the course and things that have happened, not just in the videos, but outside in Discord and things like that. So, um,
Yeah.
if folks haven't already or aren't aware already, we do have all this information at our event calendar, so events.reclaimhosting.com.
I'm gonna put up a banner, Taylor. I got you.
Yeah, thank you. And we have links to each individual session. You can register, which means you'll get email updates. There's only one more email update that's going to be going out, but this is here. And we've got little short descriptions and all the dates and times and things like that. But what we also have is at reclaimed.tech, our sort of home page for a lot of these flex courses and events that we're doing. We have weekly blog posts. So while we do have the welcome blog post that also kind of breaks down where things are and how to participate,
I love that GIF so much.
it's a very good GIF. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think here, let's give it a little bit more screen real estate. So so you can check out the welcome blog post, and that's awesome. But sorry, bye.
Huh?
We have to say goodbye to the GIF for now. But we also have weekly posts on kind of recapping what's happened and links that were shared in the Discord during or in the video. So this first session where we covered HedgeDoc was just Amanda and I, and we really talked. Honestly, I think we spent probably more than half the session laying out why this entire Flex course mattered to us as a topic and an idea. And one of my favorite things of this is, as Amanda shared a story um, about her writing a novel as like a sixth grader, and that was just like that's what she wanted to do when she was in front of a computer or had a computer available to her, is work on her novel. And how for her that was in Microsoft Word, and that was her only conception of how to write on a computer at all. Like
that is the thing that you use, the word processor that exists.
Well, and even as a sixth grader, being unaware of the category of word processors as software, it's like, oh, Microsoft Word is my word processor. It's like, no. There's one program, it's called Microsoft Word, and it lets you type things. Are there other things that let you?
That's where the words go.
Yeah, that's where the words go. Exactly. So talking about that and what that means in terms of, being locked into one type of tool, right? Like if she was in front of a computer that didn't have Microsoft Word, it meant she couldn't write her novel. So I thought that was a really great story to kind of articulate, like, both this is sort of a software and tool and capability issue, but also all of these things link into, like digital literacy and just being effective and knowing how things work. All of those things are connected all the time. And you really like when you use open tools, not only does it offer you some capabilities in terms of flexibility and and ownership of your content, but in my opinion, inherently playing with these things and learning about them lets you make more informed decisions about your technology too, because
Mhm.
you'll learn about it along the way. Um, so I thought that was great. I really enjoyed that session. We did also, of course, cover HedgeDoc itself and like what it does. It's if you don't know, it's a collaborative Markdown editor. I say you, the viewer. I know Pilot knows, but
I,
um,
yeah, I mean a little bit.
well, you've used it, right? So um, HedgeDoc is a nice little tool. I'm a big fan of what it enables, really,
Mhm.
and we do have it. It's something you can self-host in Reclaim Cloud, and we do have an installer, so it's really simple to get running with it. If you need HedgeDoc, and it's a great tool. So yeah, I'd highly recommend checking out the session, kind of hearing like us talk, Amanda and I talk about, you know, uh, the idea of Markdown at all. Like, why are we jazzed about Markdown? And what does it have to do with this course? And then what does HedgeDoc have to do with that? Which is to say, in my opinion, it makes Markdown easier to use and learn, but also collaborative with other people. Which is there's not a lot of tools that make Markdown easy to use with a group of people the way HedgeDoc does. I haven't seen anything really other than HedgeDoc. So
Yeah, it's been making me think about. I mean, this comparison kind of already exists, but the idea of like we've talked about Google Docs as a um, interoperable is not the word.
it's definitely
You
not the word with Google
just
Docs.
you just said the word that collaborative. How
Oh,
on earth
sure.
did I get there? But as a collaborative editing tool, but one of the things that I've been thinking about is like how nice it would be to co-write in something that was not Google Docs. This is not new ground that I'm treading. I'm just saying yes, essentially.
Well, and what does that let you do? I think really interesting things, like peeling the curtain back a little bit, like using our work here at Reclaim as an example.
Mhm,
I actually think, for instance, the roundup could be a really interesting use case because we draft this newsletter every month. You do a lot of it, but we also have other folks here at Reclaim contributing to it, right? So I write, a certain part of it basically.
you guys are
And
columnists, essentially.
yeah, yeah. And featured contributors. um, so we do that in Ghost, and we pretty much, at least how I do it is I actually write it in Obsidian, and then I just copy paste it into Ghost when I'm done. And
Mhm,
I think we all do something like that. Like we draft it someplace, our sections, and put it in the Ghost editor when we're done. The reason we do that is really only one person at a time can be in there and actually be able to save in Ghost.
yeah.
And that is WordPress is like that too. Um, you know,
Ghost has this might change because we do need to move Ghost to a newer version, but right now our version of Ghost also lacks a feature that WordPress has, which is WordPress will say, "You can't go into this right now. Someone else is using it." And
yeah.
Ghost doesn't do that. Ghost will let you go in and start making changes, and then when you save it, it goes, "Ooh,
Ooh,
uh,
buddy, you
sorry
can't
about that."
save right now because other people are also making changes. Yes.
Or alternatively, you can save, but I do have to go deliver some bad news to the other person currently working on this
Yeah.
doc.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say. It's better than the alternative, which I have seen Ghost do,
Mhm.
but not recently. But which is to say, yep, we saved your version of the document right over the top of everything else everyone else was doing, right? So,
Yep.
which is no good because then they lose everything too. So
Mhm.
anyway, you know, could Ghost make this better by doing what WordPress does? Yes. Will they? Probably someday. Maybe they already have. I don't even know. We do need to upgrade our version of Ghost. But but even then, it's no, we can't all be in there at the same time. But it helps you manage the limitation of only one person at a time, basically.
Yeah.
But for instance, Ghost does do really great markdown parsing, right?
Mhm.
So we could theoretically, and I will say also, I frequently don't even do that. I frequently will draft it in Obsidian. I have actually done this in HedgeDoc as well, and just copied the preview output of
Mhm.
Markdown right into the editor. That way, if you have to make changes or anybody else has to make changes, they don't have to deal with Markdown. I like Markdown, but not everyone does, right?
I like
And
Markdown. I think if we were all like, if we did move into HedgeDoc for the drafting and, like, if we all did it and then we copy pasted, then it would work, but I think right now as it is, I usually go in and try and format everything into sort of a uniform
yeah, and that
yeah.
totally makes sense.
Mhm.
So but the idea of us all working in HedgeDoc and then
Yeah.
being able to really cleanly, like when you are ready, cleanly paste it over, say like, cool, all the content is here. I'm ready to put it in Ghost now.
Yep.
Could be interesting. I don't know if it's something we necessarily need, but without HedgeDoc, that would not really be possible in a reasonable way. Google Doc, like copying out of Google Doc or Microsoft Word for that matter, into an editor like Ghost or WordPress, in my experience, is not great. If you're
Mhm.
really careful about what you copy and just the text, and then you reapply all the links and you manually upload all the images, you can do that. But at that point, it's a pain. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that bad. It's probably faster than retyping it, but well, it's certainly faster than retyping it. But
Depends how much
it could
energy you put into formatting too, though.
true, yeah. Well, and like I have definitely in the past, I don't. Again, I haven't done this because I found that me writing it in Obsidian and pasting it into Ghost works pretty much flawlessly.
Mhm.
But I have in the past done things like write out stuff that I knew I was going to copy paste someplace else in Google Docs, but leave out all formatting and like all my links I would just put in parentheses after the thing I wanted to link, kind of like Markdown actually.
Yeah.
And so then it was just sort of like, all right, this is unformatted and I'm going to paste it over there and I know it's going to be unformatted, and then I'll go through and manually add all the formatting. And I just like that, a tool like this can let you, I don't know, do something better with
Skip
your
it.
workflow. Especially, our roundups have a lot of images, so that's a complication, but they don't have a lot of crazy formatting. It's pretty standard stuff
That's
mostly.
Ghost doesn't let you do much in the way of, at least our version of Ghost doesn't, like, there's only 2 header sizes. You can only do H1 and H2 right now.
Okay,
Um,
that's interesting. So my most of my Ghost experience before the roundup was when my blog used to be a Ghost blog, like
mhm.
many versions ago. And at that time, Ghost only supported Markdown. There was no editor the way it is now.
Huh.
It had a preview, like it was not bad to use or anything. It was a little bit like Obsidian where it does like inline preview. So you see all the markdown, but then if you make something a header, it makes it larger, that kind of thing.
Yes. And then if you
Um,
click to a different line, it'll remove, like, Obsidian when you're in the line, Obsidian will say, "Ah, yes," uh, God, what are they called? Hashtags, I guess. There's a real word, but, um,
pound sign. Yeah.
pound sign, H H2, and then you click out and it goes, "No, it's just big, it's just a header."
Yeah. So I know Ghost will do more than the header 1 and header 2 because a lot of my old posts have that. So I
Yeah.
bet you can only do other header sizes if you use Markdown. The nice thing is Ghost lets you actually seamlessly go. Like if you make a Markdown block, it doesn't
Mhm.
look like in the final blog post, people won't be able to tell that you're switching.
No. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, so that was
But
a great session, HedgeDoc. And I do
Mhm.
think people could benefit from looking at that tool, because if your goal is to collaborate on something and then the text ends up someplace else later, it may be a lot easier to transform it from a Markdown file to something else than a Google Doc or Word doc, depending on what you're doing. So, cool. So that was week 1. We are not making fast progress through these weeks, but that's okay. I mean,
well, if we spend 20 minutes on each topic and we've already done 3, we're perfectly on schedule.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
So a couple other things. We have this sample doc that we link to, and this is something that we made in HedgeDoc actually quite a while ago, in partnership with SNC. They have this domains camp project they're going through, and we help them with some of the content for it. So this is one doc that we basically delivered to them in a different format, but we used HedgeDoc as a team to draft it. And so we use this as our example. So what we did is we shared this link with everybody, and every single week of the course, we've been taking this and putting it in whatever system we're talking about, just to kind of demonstrate this is what it could look like over here, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We did Etherpad came up in the Discord during the recording. Etherpad is a really awesome tool. It's very similar to HedgeDoc in purpose, in that it is a collaborative editor, except it's not Markdown focused. It's more of like its own rich text kind of thing. So Etherpad is much more a direct Google Doc kind of replacement. It is simply, this is Google Docs kind of, but you can host it yourself and it's open source. So again, really cool tool. It does have some features that HedgeDoc doesn't have, like right in, I'm glad it just popped up. It has like built-in chat and things like that, which is really interesting. But
Google Docs used to have chat. Did they get rid of it?
No, I meant, sorry, HedgeDoc doesn't have chat.
Yes.
So, and it has like good commenting. This is one thing that I wish HedgeDoc did better, is it uses like a format of Markdown to do comments, but it's not comments the way you want them. Like in Google Docs, where you can have named people and you can converse in the comments.
Yeah, it's more like commenting your code than it is like leaving a comment.
It's exactly
annotations.
That's a really good way of explaining to it. Like if you know what code comments are, in that it is markup in line in your document, that is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
One thing that I didn't actually talk about in the session, I wish I would have, but you could combine some of these tools to get that functionality. So one thing you could do, and we'll get to Docsify this later, is you could take this file, run it through Docsify this, and check the box to enable hypothesis comments. And then you could kind of get that functionality, which is cool.
Huh.
So it's really 3 tools that you're using at that point, but it's pretty simple. Like
this is really why we call these courses ecosystems. It's like everything can flourish together.
They're better than the sum of their parts, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal. So Typora and Obsidian, these came up. These are desktop Markdown editors that you can use. So Typora is, I believe, on every platform. I use it on my Mac mostly. But it is paid. It's like $15, but it's a one-time purchase. Yeah, they even have a Linux client. So Mac, Windows, and Linux. Typora I really like for if I'm working with just a single file and it's not in my Obsidian vault. It's a nice tool if you're looking for something that does a really good job of working with a single Markdown file. Obsidian is amazing, and we have a lot of fans of it around here. But Obsidian is a whole note-taking system. I will prevent myself from talking too much about it because it's not about Obsidian today. But I use the heck out of Obsidian. Literally, it's one of the apps that's open on my computer all day, and usually has a dedicated spot on my monitor just to like capture things as I think of them. But it is a fantastic Markdown editor, but it's really more for like creating a personal knowledge base, basically, or note-taking system. So the cool thing about Obsidian, though, is it's free to use. There are paid features for if you want to use their syncing service or publishing service. So Sync is, I actually do use their syncing service because it's really good and it's worth how much I use it. The publishing one lets you take an Obsidian vault and basically make it into a website, which is interesting. I've not used it though.
I'm honestly really intrigued by both of those because one of the things that I really like about Google Docs specifically is and Markdown you can do this because it's happening in browser. You can do it for Google Docs as well, but I think you've mentioned that Obsidian you can run on your phone, maybe?
Yep, I use it
Yeah.
every day on my phone too.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing that I really like about Google Docs specifically is the ability to like pull up the app at any time. So if I'm like I'm gonna go take a bus to visit my parents for the holidays over the weekend, and if I wanted to write something down, I don't want to have to pull out my laptop and get onto a hotspot or something. I can just do it on my phone. And so now I'm really tempted by the Obsidian Sync thing because I would love to be able to do that more easily.
Yeah, it's mind-blowingly fast and good. So
Mhm.
I here bring my screen back in for a second. This is my Obsidian Vault, and I use like a plugin to automatically make daily notes. So basically, when I open Obsidian, the default thing is it's going to like jump me into a note for the day, formatted how I like, because
I have the same.
there's one true formatting system, which is year, month, date.
Oh yes,
Um,
I have
um,
the same plugin and the same formatting system.
oh, fantastic! That's good. I
Yes.
felt like I was alone with that. I know, most Americans like month, day, year. I recognize that that is silly, even though it is what everybody uses. Most Europeans use day, month, year, which I think makes more sense. But then it's easy to confuse because of the slashes. So anyway,
It's the thing with day, month, year is that like if you want to use it to sort your files, it's even more
it's
difficult to
terrible. Yeah,
sort.
unusable. Yeah.
Like with at least with month, day, year, you can say, all right, here's everything from I guess every December that's ever happened, and then we'll get to all the Novembers later. But
Yeah.
like for if you're sorting day, month, year, you'd get all right, here's everything that's
Every first of the month that's ever happened.
yeah, and it becomes much more difficult. And this is why year, month, day, best.
One true, at least in files and stuff on the computer.
Yes.
That's where I most often use it. I don't find myself writing. Actually, I am increasingly writing in this way too, but I don't
It's
write a lot of notes by hand, so whatever.
I'm I'm this is maybe a weird me thing, but I'm like hyper aware of uh I mean the more that I like write to clients and I put together uh paperwork and stuff like that, the more hyper aware I get of different time zones and different like date formatting
Mhm.
styles. And so I move towards this because it is universally recognizable. Like there
Yeah.
is never going to be any
No one's
confusion.
gonna mistake this
Yeah.
for anything else. Yeah. So anyway, so I haven't written really anything in here today other than I put a heading for the stream. I tend to kind of like make headings for major things
Mhm.
I'm doing that day. But anyway, but the cool thing is like the sync is so fast. So you can see my phone here. I'm sure you can't read it that well, but like if I start typing,
Oh yeah.
it's going to be there as soon
Oh
as I move
wow.
off of the line. It's very,
That's
very fast.
great.
And then Sync Obsidian Sync also does backups, so you can restore just like Google Docs. So anyway, there are free solutions. You can use iCloud. You can put your Obsidian Vault in iCloud Drive, and then it will theoretically sync between devices. But in my experience, it's nowhere near as fast, nor is it as reliable.
Mhm.
You'll end up with copies of notes because it'll be like, ooh, you edited this one, but there were changes over here. Luckily, it won't destroy anything, but it will make copies. And I was
Yeah.
like, I will pay, I use this enough. I will pay the $8. That is worth it for me. Actually, and I think they have a yearly discount that I actually paid for. Anyway, that's Obsidian.
Mhm.
um, the we also mentioned that we do have a video on our HedgeDoc installer itself. So we went through this about a month ago and demoed kind of our work on it and how to install it, how to set it up. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. We didn't really cover how to install it on Reclaim Cloud because we had enough things to cover. And then this is really fantastic too. So Amanda linked this learning module on from the Geneseo Center for Digital Learning Critical Digital Practice course, and how to think about using Markdown as a daily journal. This is actually similar to what I do in Obsidian, but like a fully DIY way to do it, which is really interesting and cool. So I think this is worth a read if you're at all interested in this stuff or a Markdown nerd or whatever. So highly recommend that.
Yes.
So finally moving on to another session.
We got 25 minutes. Well, you know what? These don't have a set time. Let's go for 2 hours. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Manifold is session 2. And so Jojo Carlin joined us for this session. It was a fantastic, like I said, we had, I think, a really interesting conversation where Jojo was talking about, you know, what is Manifold trying to solve? What is it trying to do? We spent a lot of time talking about that in various different ways. And I think it's core to understanding why you should know or care about Manifold at all, basically. Because if you look at Manifold on the surface of it, it's like, okay, this thing is helpful for publishing specific types of, you know, this is for publishing in like the academic sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like publishing journals and even like research projects, and that is great, and it has all kinds of tools and metadata to help you organize that, but it also is very focused on the reading experience, which I thought was really interesting to hear her talk about, and something that I had not really thought about much. Like mostly like the end goal for most of the tools that like you and I deal with on a day-to-day basis as working at a web hosting company is like, does it display in the way we want, right?
Yeah.
I've got a menu up here so people can click on it. The article display, cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what you care about. You might care about the design of the website, of course.
Yeah, we spend enough time arguing about full site editor.
For sure. For
example.
We should maybe even rebrand community chats as Full Site Editing Monthly. I think it's got to come up at least once a month.
We can't encourage this, Taylor. We need to try and be something more.
I think it's what people need. People need to talk about it and get their feelings out about it, because it's yeah. So the idea of Manifold being more than that,
mm-hmm.
And also being a like delightful place to read, I think is an objective of that software, or a goal of that software. So that was really cool. We talked about some of the tools it had in there. So if I go to our example doc, I'll use that. My cat, you can't see her, but she's currently on my desk trying to pick at my microphone. So
once again, our favorite participant.
Yeah. Oh God. So this is our demo where we took that Domains Camp doc.
I just put up a banner with the link. I would heavily advise instead going to the Manifolds thing, because you can't copy paste out of this video, and it's not the nicest looking URL. So
yeah,
go back about a minute and use the blog post link.
I'll put it in Discord too if you happen to be watching live or recently. But so anyway, it's got, you know, okay, you can go through it's got a nice table of contents, which is cool. You can star. That's really interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you have built-in annotation, which is really neat. So we mentioned Hypothesis just briefly as another annotation tool, and I love that Manifold has its own highlighting and annotation system built in. And the intention here, the intention with Manifold is anyone can make an account on a Manifold instance. It's just not everyone has the ability to like make, you know, new stuff in it.
Yeah.
But by default, you can go to any Manifold instance, make an account, and start putting highlights and annotations in there, which is really cool. And means that it encourages sort of that experience on the digital publication, which I think is I don't know, maybe
like a conversation going on. Like it encourages.
It embraces it is maybe the word I'm looking for, right? Like, and also you can turn it off, right? So you can have a publication that has annotation and highlighting turned off for certain public ones, turned off for certain parts of it, which I think is also really interesting. And making that a first-class citizen in the tool, I think is just a brilliant idea. So
Mhm.
um,
It's I think I maybe missed this. Is can you can see other people's annotations and highlights too, right?
you can. So when
Yes.
you make one here, if I highlight, let's highlight. It doesn't matter. I don't know why I'm. Yeah, I'll highlight this sentence.
Mhm.
Um, so I can annotate it, highlight. Let's make this a highlight. If
Yes.
I click on this, I can change the group. It says your current group, my
My
private
private
annotations.
annotations, and
I can
then
change it to public. You can also add more groups. So you can have like reading groups that are organized in Manifold,
oh,
which is super
man.
cool. It's really interesting.
Mhm.
And that's not even getting into the some of the just reading features here. So first of all, I think out of the box, it is just like a nice reading experience. Things look attractive. But it does have the ability to turn off and on yours or others' highlights and annotations. You can switch between reading groups here. You can even like nicely like turn all of it off at once. But then you also have this menu where you can change the font to be a serif or sans serif font, the
Mm.
size of it, the is it dark mode or light mode, even change the margins, right? So this kind of like blends the line between content management system and like e-reading system.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. Which
um,
is that's the switching modes thing is also really nice because that's a we were talking about, like, we think a lot about how to get your stuff out there in the format that you want it, but, like, there's a truck going by, but the idea of there are a lot of people who would really prefer a light mode, dark mode toggle or something like that. And that's, some sites build that in, but that's very much not at the forefront of your design goal. You don't want to make two sites when you can just make one necessarily. That taking a very long way to say the thing that you already said, which is adding those e-reader functionalities to make it nicer for the person who's trying to read.
exactly, and they get to choose, right? Like this
Yeah.
is not this centers it around the reader, not the
Yes.
designer of the website, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting.
And also,
And also makes it easier, right? Like you don't have to from whole cloth create this stuff for a publication. This is built into the software, right?
and even I'm just from like a higher level perspective, from the writing point of view, that really puts it on the person writing to care a lot more about the writing that they're doing,
Yeah.
because the styling of the site is not is you are taking the styling of this site and putting it outside of your concern. That's no longer your job. I guess like copy editing and making sure that's good is your job, but you can't worry about how it'll look visually to the reader
Yeah.
because that's you, you simply can't. You have to focus on the text.
And there are visual elements you can consider, right? Like there are resources you can this is not the most rich example of what's possible in Manifold because again, we took a markdown file and literally uploaded it. Like I have not changed anything about this, right?
Mhm.
But there are, other types of resources you can include in Manifold. So there's some of that, but it encourages you to focus on the content,
Yeah.
not the design. So yeah, that was a fantastic session. I really had a great time.
JoJo's amazing.
Yeah, with making it. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Mhm.
There's a couple other links in here. So talking about retooling the monograph. This is fantastic if you're curious about how Manifold started. Check this out. This is gonna get you
I'm not
background
putting
into
up a
the
banner for that. We're
project.
going through this too fast. Go to the blog post. Here's the banner for the blog post.
Oh, this blog post. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so we've got that. We have a community page for Manifold that just kind of talks about some of the major instances out there and who's using it, which is really great if you're curious about that. We mentioned specifically some examples of that. The metadata, I don't even remember what this is. Oh, okay. So this is information about the metadata that Manifold supports, and it
Oh,
is
that's neat.
informed by Dublin Core.
I was gonna say, it's making me think of Omeka, which is a totally different platform for totally different stuff, but it's still
Similar
Omeka.
metadata.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell librarians were involved.
Yes.
Which
is
great.
good because what we don't need, well, what I always need, but no, what the rest of the world doesn't need is another classification system.
Yeah,
Let's
and
have-
you also it's good that attention is paid to that stuff, right? Like
yes.
if for instance I was capable of making something like Manifold, and indeed I did do that, I wouldn't have this because I don't know about that stuff, and it would be worse for it, right? So
Yes.
you need people who care about those things involved. So also just a direct link to the GitHub. If you're curious, they actually have a whole bunch of repositories about like various tooling that they have, and of course some of it is really for developers of it. But you can also put issues in here, which is good. And yeah, so that's a link to the GitHub and our example doc. So that was Manifold. I had a blast making that session, and y'all should check it out. Then if I go back to our listing of blog posts here, we also had most recently, so this week, Doxify This. And Doxify This is such a unique and interesting tool, in my opinion. And it was great talking to Paul about, his vision for it and what he's trying to do. I've said that a couple times, but I think is also possibly just as important in the as it was in the Manifold session, because Doxify This, while it's a little bit more straightforwardly, like you have content, in this case in Markdown format, and you want it on the web, that's what it is for. The actual niche of how that works is what he's trying to solve. So he's trying to make something that anybody can use without even having to have like hosting, which is really interesting. So Doxify This is a browser-based tool for it. What?
Well, I was just going to say, and like going back to the November community chat where we talked about what people wanted, some of the things people were saying was like, how do I get as far away from what is the lowest tech I can make this?
Exactly.
And yeah.
Yeah. And in this case, you can take a markdown file that you've put on your own web hosting, or in GitHub, or in Codeberg, which is like a GitHub alternative. Really anything that will let you take a text file and upload it somewhere to be displayed, or just hosted, I should say. This will display it in a pleasing and customizable way. So fantastic video. Paul, I think, does a really admirable job of designing this tool to be something that is at first dead simple, which is to say, you give me a link to a markdown file and I'll give you a web page, basically, is the relationship with the tool. But then you can go down and customize almost anything about the way that's actually displayed in really interesting ways. So
low threshold, high ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. And we also talked about, and this is just something that I really find cool from like a educational perspective, is that it also is really interesting. You can see at work how the tool is working without even examining the code, but by examining the URL, because the way Doxify This works is all happening in your browser. So when you tick a box like enable hypothesis commenting, you will see that little option be added to the URL for your file, which I find interesting if you're talking with people about what URLs are and like how to look at them. And people may be more familiar with this with like, have you ever tried to like drop a link to an Amazon product to someone, and it's like this ungodly disaster of tracking and mess? It's super long.
I think Firefox recently rolled out an option where you can not just right-click a link and then select copy link, but you can right-click a link and then below that there's also the option to copy link without tracking.
Yes, it did, and it's fantastic. But if you ever had to clean that up manually, which if you're not using Firefox or
Before
or
they
at
rolled out
all
that feature.
before like 2 weeks ago. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty new. You probably either have just lived with these, I think it's what most people do, or like me, you try to find out like what's the minimum link I can include here, and it still works, and then I like try it in an incognito window or a private window or whatever. Anyway,
It
there's
takes a million years, but it's worth it.
it's worth it for me. So but you start learning like, oh, like if I'm looking at a URL and there's a question mark equals in there, that is like possibly not
It's
an
adding
important part of the
something.
URL. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's adding something. It depends on the system and the tool, right? But that might be something you can lose. Those are called parameters, I believe, URL parameters. All of Doxify this is options are via URL parameters, basically. So it's super interesting to see that change. We talk a little bit about that.
Mhm.
So if I go here,
I don't
for
know if you
instance,
can,
this is our sample document.
I was gonna say, I don't know if you can make your
A
no.
URL larger?
Yeah.
No, I'll paste it in something else to do it that way.
If you paste it anywhere I can get to it, I can put it as a banner.
Oh, sure.
Wherever.
Well, I'm gonna put it on screen because we're gonna manipulate it a little bit.
Oh,
So,
yes. No, that makes way more sense. Let's do that.
so this is the okay. First, I should say this is our sample document again. So in this case, it's really cool because Doxify this is actually displaying this sample document directly from HedgeDoc. So if I was to go in HedgeDoc right now, and maybe I will, um, I
will add it as a banner just for reference, but we're going to take it away soon when we start doing science.
I can edit this document.
God.
And if I go over to Doxify this and refresh it, hey, look,
That's really
there's
cool.
my new text.
It's just really cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And that's because what it's doing is directly displaying this is the public markdown file. And that's what Doxify is displaying. So if I refresh it here, I'll go back. So if I go back to the actual base instance here, Doxify this, you give it a link. So if I grab my Doxify file here, now I think I'm going to have to pull the question mark edit off of it, to be honest with you. What we recommend is just hit the publish button and grab this link. But anyway, you grab the link to the file, and most often, we're talking about putting this file in GitHub, Codeberg, your website, like on a subdomain, like something like that. And then you hit publish, and it's going to display it, right? But so that's what it can do, and it does it in this nice, clean way. It can be embedded into other web pages and systems using iframes, which is super cool. And we demonstrated like why you might do that by like embedding it into a Canvas course, or in the case like Alan Levine uses this for documentation of Splots, so it gets embedded directly in WordPress admin, which is super cool. Which means he can update the documentation even if the theme's not updated. You'll still see the latest version of the documentation, which is super cool. But you also get these other tools. So you can say like, "Ooh, I'd like a nice little table of contents or sidebar. I'd like to edit this page link. So we'll do a sidebar, and I'll do this again. And now I've got a sidebar. But you can also go into more appearance options and do things like change the font. Let's go with, I don't know, Lato. Let's change the color. I'll make it, let's make it like a truly horrendous, like mustard yellow. I can do pink. That's going to be better. Let's do a bright pink. I'm going to change, we'll do that. We'll start there. So now the accent color is pink. I'm going to change it to have, it says the maximum header level of the sidebar. So let's say in this document, we mostly have header. Oh, this is the wrong tab. There we go. In this document, we mostly have header 1 and 2. But if you had a document that had other header sizes, you could just decide what level gets included in that sidebar. You can also separately have that setting in the table of contents. So the table of contents view looks like this. So it puts it on the right side here.
Yeah.
And even better than that, there's also an advanced view for changing just about everything. And if you're like me and impatient, I go here and I do a Control F for advanced.
Mhm.
And if you click on advanced web page builder, you get this different view of the builder, where I don't know if this is going to work with the S. No, it doesn't. Need to not include the S in that URL. Oh, I also realized I'm not on the right instance. That's it. So I need to include that there. This is the advanced
Might need to
version
make
of the builder.
that. Are we sharing that URL or not?
Nah, don't worry about it.
Okay,
It's a link on Docsify this, but
okay.
now you get all kinds of options, including like changing the page title and oh, this is cool, enabling zoom images. So this is like I have this set up like on my
Oh,
blog.
yes.
So I'm just gonna, yeah, I gotta put the reclaimed.tech/domains camp one. So if I click on an image, it's going to do this with it.
Mhm.
You can enable a search field in the sidebar, which is super cool if you have a long document. You can have link to or change the website name display there. And there are more options in this even that aren't available as the GUI. So all of these things are URL parameters that are documented in here, and you can do all kinds of crazy things with. But
Yeah.
as you can see, as I change these options, let's change the font again and the color and publish this again, it's going to change the URL to include these options. So if I go back to my text edit window here,
Yep, there you go.
this is the first URL we looked at, and this is the new one. And you can see all of this other stuff, family, and with having the font information there and link color. So it's kind of cool that it itself is happening all in the URL, which is really interesting. Even the advanced view itself is just a URL parameter, right? If this is technically, if I got rid of this is the link to our Docsify instance. But if I have $advanced equals true on the end of it, it's going to do the advanced version, which is super interesting to me. So just a fantastic tool in its simplicity, but you can go down the rabbit hole, right? Like for sure.
Yeah.
So in Docsify, this is something that you can just use. I mean, if your needs are simple, you can just use the public one. So it's docsifythis.net. And this is the one that Paul, I think he just hosted on GitHub pages. But and you can use this. But if you want this at your own custom domain name, which if you're going to be linking to it, you might, right? Like it would be good to do that because it's a domain you control and all the good stuff that we know about domains, right? You literally just download the folder from GitHub and upload it into your cPanel and extract it. And we demo that in the video. Like there's nothing else to it. It's just a bunch of files. And if you want to update it, then you do that again. Now, if you're a big fan of like Git and GitHub and you know how to do that stuff, you can also use Git to do that. So you could clone the repository from the command line, or you could set up like a GitHub action to automatically push and update it. But I kind of wanted to show people like, look, it's just a folder of files. So like you can just put it there. And I think that's possibly the most understandable, relatable way. It's how our instance is managed right now. But I don't know, maybe at some point I'll have it do automatic updating. But yeah, it's just some files. So really simple.
And it's simple. It's good.
Yeah. So that was our, and I already navigated away, but that was our third session with Paul. And again, just a blast recording that. And I hope people enjoyed it. It seems like they did. We had a lot of good questions. We also had folks during that session ask about WikiLink support, which is so cool because someone was like, hey, does this support WikiLinks? And I was like, nah, and I don't think it could. And then like immediately Paul was like, well,
Surprise.
there is a link. Oh, and we've got a test instance that already it works.
Yep.
So super interesting. So in this case, WikiLinks is just like, it's not technically part of Markdown, but it is often supported in certain tools that use Markdown. Obsidian's the big one, and it's a way to quickly link between two different notes by their title. So with this, he showed using WikiLinks in a repository. So if you had a repository of notes, you could use a WikiLink to link to another note automatically, all inside of Docsify this. So this, I don't know if this demo is still up. Looks like it is. And at the bottom, if I go to WikiLinks, I can just click on sample page, and it will go to the sample page note, which is so really interesting. Yeah, just a fantastic session. We had a really good time with it. So yeah, other than that, like I said, we had our sample documents. I think Amanda put this blog post together before before Docsify this,
the WikiLink
before
plugin.
Paul updated Docsify this to have some preliminary support for WikiLinks. But this is a plugin for Docsify, which is sort of a tool that Docsify this is built on top of, that supports WikiLinks. And I will say, this has me thinking, this plugin plus Paul's work on it has me thinking about like a fully self-hostable way to do Obsidian Publish.
This is what I'm thinking.
Maybe I should take a sabbatical and try to figure that
out. Don't take a sabbatical, then I can't work on it with you.
Yeah. But no, I actually think if you constrained yourself to saying we're going to publish a whole vault, like all of it is public, right?
Yeah.
Because it would be a little bit trickier to manage certain notes being public and certain notes being private. You could do a script essentially that does some basic formatting of the structure of those files.
Yes.
And then would be completely compatible with WikiLinks and the Docsify this stuff.
Yeah. One of the things I do think about though in Obsidian is that you can nest vaults, which is it's a weird way to handle things, but you can do it. So I have in my Obsidian, there's not really I have in Obsidian like a folder that's, we talked about like monthly, daily notes. I have a folder for the current month, 2023-12, and then I have a folder called daily notes that holds all of the folders of past months. And then I have a supplemental, which is where I put like, I needed to make a note because it was taking up too much space or something like that. And then a vault that's just like blogging notes and drafts.
That's a good point. What I probably would say is our theoretical tool we're inventing right now would publish a folder, right? So if you want to have a public folder, it will do that, but it will do the whole folder, right? And that's probably how I would do it actually, is I would just make a folder in my vault, call it public, and just be like, these are where the public notes live. And then what you could use is Git to sync that. So we would set up some instructions, right? So we'd say like, all right, go open a command line. Sorry, you need to use a command line for this probably. And CD to the folder that you want to sync and run these Git commands to publish it. And then run this last script that I could make. Because the one tricky thing is you would need to do some find and replace on potentially on some links and special.
I was going to say, like, you might run
features.
into dead links or things like that.
Exactly. And you would probably just exclude them, I think is what you would do, so that they aren't broken. And then also for WikiLinks to work, the way that, as far as I can tell, the way they would work is they have to be in the same folder structure. So I think you would need to take all your notes and flatten them for the public version. So they wouldn't be in separate folders. WikiLinks work in Obsidian, not like
right, because Obsidian is smart.
But in Docsify this, it's not aware of that structure. So I think for the public version, it would flatten it all to one folder, basically.
Yeah.
But you could do that. And then, you could either sync it, like probably, I was saying Git, but I don't necessarily mean GitHub, right? Like you could host it on GitHub if you wanted to, but you could use Git to do the syncing
change
to a
control.
cPanel account even.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's another stream. Maybe
2024. We're coming up with our stream calendar now. 2024. Let's go.
For sure. So this is what I like about these tools, is that they're open to the point where they're flexible and interchangeable and remixable, and I find that empowering as a technologist.
Yeah.
It gets me excited. So we are over time a little bit, but thanks, Pilot, for joining me on this little recap.
It's just good, and it's nice also to be able to. I think doing the recap has been very helpful to me in terms of thinking about the ecosystem of how these can all work together. Like, we've been touching on it, but to say, okay, here's the comparisons between annotations in one versus the other, and here's how you could thread together Markdown and Obsidian and Docsify to do a HedgeDoc and Markdown pipeline, I guess. I don't know. Just it's getting to. This has been fun. I'm dragging the stream out so that it doesn't have to end. This has been really fun.
It's been really fun, and I'm excited for see what folks think of our last week in hacks.
Yes.
And we'll see everyone next week for karaoke, I believe, on Friday.
Wait, let me really quickly say, I should have done this banner before, but I didn't. What's next Tuesday's date? Gosh.
Next Tuesday is the 19th.
Next Tuesday is the 19th. I'm a fool and a fraud. It took me more time to make this banner than it will probably be on screen. But here it is.
You know what we'll do? We'll let the stream play out with the banner on screen for a little bit.
Yeah. So we can do a little outro.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. But yeah, thanks for joining me, Pilot, and we'll see everyone next time. Bye.
See you then. Bye.